Okay, let's get into this. So many people find themselves here, right? You're in a relationship, things feel, well, mostly okay.
Mm.
But there's that feeling, that sort of nagging question that you've kind of hit a ceiling.
Yeah, plateau.
Exactly. You want things to move forward. Maybe it's about putting a label on it or
Yeah.
talking exclusivity, moving in, maybe even marriage.
Right.
But the other person just seems, well, resistant.
Yeah.
Or maybe just stuck. It's super frustrating.
It really is that moment where you realize, wait, are we on the same timeline here? Or, even heading in the same general direction, it creates so much uncertainty.
Definitely. Because you're putting energy in, right?
Yeah.
You're invested. And you kind of need to know if that energy is actually going towards a future you want.
Yeah, you need clarity.
Right. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at some material from a chapter that really tackles this specific challenge head on.
Yeah.
How do you handle that moment when you're ready for more, but commitment feels like this big wall?
So our goal for this deep dive is really to unpack the key ideas from this source material. We want to understand first why this happens, why one person pushes and the other pulls back,
Yeah.
and then crucially look at the strategies it suggests for, actually navigating that situation effectively.
Okay, so the material we're exploring kicks off with a really direct, kind of sharp question for you, the listener, if this sounds familiar. It basically asks, is this the first time you felt this way with this specific person? Or is this something you see again and again? Is this feeling of wanting more commitment but hitting resistance, is that a pattern in your relationships?
And that first distinction is just, it's so crucial. The chapter really emphasizes these are two totally different situations.
Right. Yeah.
Recognizing which one fits your experience is like step one. You absolutely have to figure out if the core issue is mainly about this particular relationship, this dynamic, or if it's maybe something you're bringing into relationships more generally.
Okay, so let's focus on that first possibility. What if it is a pattern? You look back, and yeah, this whole push-pull thing around commitment, it happens a lot. The source material suggests, well, that's probably not just a string of bad luck.
Right. The perspective here is if you find yourself consistently drawn to people who are maybe emotionally distant or already seeing someone else or just fundamentally unwilling to commit the way you want them to,
Yeah.
then you might be perhaps subconsciously actually selecting partners who fit that specific description. Maybe there's a part of you drawn to the challenge, thinking you can change them or win them over somehow.
And the chapter really pushes for some, well, pretty tough self-reflection here. It lays out questions like, are you often the one with people who just won't fully commit? Do you feel like you're always the girlfriend before the wife, like a stepping stone? Do you find yourself dating people you can't quite trust or maybe who are controlling?
Or hoping that sex will just sort of magically turn into commitment.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Or trying to rescue partners.
Yeah.
People with big issues. Dating people who cheat, or even starting things with people who are already cheating.
And maybe the classic sign, when things end, do you just tell your friends they were crazy?
Right. So if those questions hit home, the conclusion in the material is pretty blunt.
It is. It suggests you might be someone who maybe deep down kind of loves the chase. You're living more in the idea of what the relationship could be, the potential, rather than the actual reality of what's in front of you. And it frames this not as a small quirk, but as a really significant pattern that's actually holding you back.
And it's not just, like, opinion either. There's research mentioned to support this. It talks about an 8-year study from the University of Alberta.
That's the one, yeah, University of Alberta. And what that study found is really, really telling. It suggested that once that initial honeymoon phase wears off, the excitement, people often just slide right back into the exact same kind of relationship dynamics they had before.
Wow.
It seems we tend to carry our unresolved stuff, our old patterns, into new situations. And we subconsciously pick partners who fit those patterns, even if they're unhealthy.
So you just recreate the same problem.
Exactly. Because the root issues within you haven't been addressed. The cycle just continues.
Okay, so this is getting deep. If this pattern resonates, if this sounds like you, the advice from this chapter is, well, it's strong.
It's very clear, unequivocal, really. You have to break the pattern. And it explicitly says another relationship right now. That's not the answer.
It'll make it worse.
It'll likely just keep the cycle going, yeah. Make things worse in the long run.
So what is the answer then, according to this?
The recommendation is, frankly, intense. It says you need to be single.
Okay.
Not just take a little break, but specifically Commit to being single for the next year.
A full year.
A full year. And the whole point of that time is to focus completely on you, learning to be happy alone, doing that healing work, understanding why you choose unavailable partners, and then dismantling that pattern.
That's a big ask.
Yeah.
And the material anticipates the reaction, doesn't it? It talks about how we all think we're the exception.
Oh, definitely. It connects back to this idea mentioned earlier in the source about denial. It basically says, look, if this is your pattern, the one with non-committal partners, you're not the exception here. In this dynamic, you are the part of the equation that needs attention. Denial, it says, is the single biggest hurdle to doing this really essential work on yourself.
It's tough love, for sure. But the framing is that it's necessary to get to something better.
Exactly. The argument is you deserve that amazing love story, building a real future with someone who wants the same things. But that only really becomes possible, it argues, once you figure out and fix the root cause of why you keep ending up with people who can't or won't commit.
Okay. So that covers the whole pattern issue and the pretty intense self-work it recommends if that's your situation. But what if it's not a pattern? Or maybe you've done that work and now you're in this relationship and you are ready for the next step.
Right.
The material then shifts focus to actually having that conversation. And it suggests, basically, the minute you start really wondering, where is this going, that's your cue. It's time to talk.
Yeah, exactly. The core point here is you should never feel bad or guilty for wanting what you want, for asking for commitment or clarity. And crucially, don't hint.
Not hinting.
Ah.
It feels so much safer sometimes, though, doesn't it?
It might feel safer, yeah, in the moment. But the material really stresses that healthy relationships are built on being able to have those direct, honest conversations, especially about the big stuff, like the future.
Right.
This kind of talk isn't something to dread. It's what actually makes a connection stronger if it's real. It puts it very powerfully. A real conversation only destroys something that is fake.
That's a great line. Wow. And it brings in a specific technique for this conversation from Matthew Hussey. It mentions a story about him and his wife, Audrey.
Yes, that anecdote is quite revealing. Apparently, Hussey points out that the biggest mistake people make when they want more commitment is they make the whole conversation about the other person.
How so?
Like focusing on how much they like the other person, what they want from them, maybe trying to make them feel guilty.
Right, okay. I could see that. So
Yeah.
what's the better way? The Audrey way.
The approach that worked, according to this and Husky's own story, is to shift the focus entirely. Make the conversation about your time, your energy, and what you were looking for in your life.
So Audrey didn't put pressure on him.
No, not directly. She centered the conversation on her own values, her need for commitment, and how she chooses to invest her time going forward. And apparently it totally shifted the dynamic because it was about her standards, not his flaws.
And it worked.
According to the story, yes. He realized what he could lose and committed.
That's a really powerful reframe, moving from pleading or pressuring to just stating your own terms. What about the logistics? Does it give tips on how to have the talk?
It does. It suggests picking the right time and place.
Yeah.
So definitely not at a noisy bar, probably not on the phone, definitely not when you're rushed for time.
And absolutely no texting this conversation.
Absolutely not. And maybe the most important part, go into it without being attached to getting the answer you want. The real goal is just to get the truth.
Okay.
Find out where you actually stand, even if that truth is disappointing. It's presented as less of an emotional plea and more of a clear, factual statement about what's important to you.
And it even sketches out a kind of script, right? Like a template you can adapt.
Yeah, it provides a structure. It suggests starting by acknowledging the good times you've shared. Then clearly state that you know yourself, you know what you want, which includes commitment, and you want to see if you're both on the same page about the future. Then you express that you value your time and energy deeply, and you've reached a point where you only want to invest that energy if the relationship has the potential to go to that next level you're looking for.
Okay, makes sense.
And you finish by saying, essentially, look, I've really enjoyed this, but if you don't see the same kind of committed future, I respect that. But I need to be true to myself and spend my time with people who want the same things I do.
Wow. Yeah, hearing it laid out like that, it just feels different. Less needy, more empowered.
Totally. The analysis offered is that this works because it's so matter of fact. It's respectful, but it powerfully signals that you value yourself, your time, your energy.
It's complimentary even, by acknowledging the good parts.
Right. But zero guilt, no blame, no sob story. It just presents your reality and your choice based on your own self-worth.
And that self-respect, that boundary is actually really attractive, isn't it?
It,
Demands respect.
it really does. It's coming from a place of strength and self-value. And crucially, this framing leaves the door wide open for them to say no honestly without feeling cornered or attacked.
Which brings us to the hard part. Because sometimes, even if you do everything right, they will say no. And yeah, the material acknowledges that hurts a lot. It can feel really demoralizing. But the core message is,
Yeah.
you'll survive this. You'll be okay.
And this is where the let them theory gets introduced. It's presented in two parts. Part one is let them.
Okay, let them.
Let them show you who they are. If they say no to moving forward, no to the label, no to exclusivity, no to moving in, marriage, kids, whatever that next step is for you, they have just given you crucial information. They've shown you the limit of what they are willing or able to give you in this relationship. That's it. This is the ceiling.
So let them means accepting their answer as their truth. Don't try to argue or change it.
Exactly. Let their words and actions reveal the reality of the situation. The material brings in a really potent analogy here from Sarah Jakes Roberts. Are you okay settling for table scraps, or are you looking for a full 5-star meal?
Oof, that's powerful.
It is. And if you choose to stay after they've clearly said no to the commitment you need, the material is incredibly direct. That decision is now 100% on you.
And the advice gets even tougher, doesn't it?
It does. It suggests that if you stay in that situation knowing they won't commit, your next call probably ought to be to a therapist, because there's likely something deeper going on within you that's keeping you there.
Right. Which leads back to those really challenging questions it poses.
Yeah. Why do you want to be with someone who doesn't want the same things? Why settle for less than the commitment you truly desire? It forces that uncomfortable inward look.
And it gets the fear, too. It acknowledges how terrifying it feels to face being alone again, how deflating it is to feel like you've wasted time, and how tempting it is just to take those table scraps, because starting over feels exhausting. And that little voice saying, you'll never find anyone else this good.
But the source pushes back really hard against that voice of fear. It states, point blank, that's wrong. It's simply not true. You won't find love again.
You will find someone as good, or better.
Yes. That belief is presented as a limiting lie you tell yourself.
So the bottom line is, don't take the scraps. Find the courage to walk away.
Exactly, because saying no to the wrong situation, the one that doesn't meet your needs, is precisely how you make space for the right person to enter your life.
Which leads perfectly into the second part of the theory.
Right. Part two, let me.
Okay, so if let them is about seeing their truth, let me is about...
It's about your actions. It's about reclaiming your agency after they've revealed where they stand. It's focusing on what you will do now.
So what are the let me actions?
The material lists them as internal statements, really.
Yeah.
Let me be the one who ends this relationship because it's not meeting my needs. Let me trust that this pain is actually a step towards the love I deserve. Let me stop chasing the potential I saw and accept the reality they've shown me. Let me choose to believe I just got one step closer to the right person by leaving the wrong one. Let me take my power back.
It's all about shifting the focus back to your own choices and your own path forward.
Precisely. And the whole idea wraps up with this really hopeful belief. Once you do this work, once you choose yourself and refuse to settle for less than you deserve, the love of your life isn't far away. It might be just around the corner.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, we've covered quite a bit. That critical first step, figuring out if this commitment issue is a pattern for you or specific to this relationship.
Then the really deep, sometimes hard self-work needed. If it is a pattern, maybe even taking that full year to be single and heal.
Right. Then we looked at that powerful, strategic way to actually have the commitment conversation, focusing on valuing your time, not pressuring them.
Yeah, the Matthew Hussey approach.
Exactly. And finally, that two-part let me theory, letting them show you their truth, accepting it, and then letting yourself choose what's best for you, reclaiming your power.
It's a comprehensive approach, and thinking about everything we've discussed, especially that research on repeating patterns and how strongly the source material talks about denial, it really leaves us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it?
What's that?
Well, just how genuinely difficult is it for any of us, for you listening, to truly confront the possibility that maybe, just maybe, you are a contributing factor in your own relationship struggles around commitment? And what do you think the biggest thing is that holds people back from doing that really necessary, sometimes painful self-work that this material argues is so crucial?